Welcome to this episode of Renovations for Beginners, a show where we show you, the viewers at home, the fundamentals to renovating, from conceptualising an idea to bringing it to reality. I'm Michael Duray, your host for the show. You can follow us on Facebook, just search Renovations for Beginners, or you can email us on any aspects to renovating or questions you may want answered for upcoming shows on renovationsforbeginners@gmail.com. On today's show, we're going to explore the planning stage of your project. This is where you are settled 99% on your design, and now you're in the process of getting all the necessary approvals for the proposed renovation before you build, and more importantly, after you finish building, so your renovation project is signed off by a certifier, and this enables you to ensure your renovation project for years to come. Prior to the show, and in consultation with our next guest, we've got a lot of material to get through. So if you're planning on sneaking off for a cup of coffee or a toilet break, best you wait for one of the upcoming ad breaks. But without further ado, our guest for today's show is Gareth Martin from Brisbane Certification Group. Gareth, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Michael. Pleasure to be on the show.
Now, Gareth, as I said, there's a lot of information to get through. I've seen your notes, and we shouldn't dilly-dally. So what I want to talk about is, on last week's show, we went through the design stage, got to like a concept, got to like a design that we're settled with, and now we want to get all the necessary approvals for it. Now there's probably a misconception that you have to get a development application and a building application, but in some cases you only need to get a building application. That's correct?
That's right, yeah. If the proposed works satisfy the planning scheme, then yes, it is possible that you only need building approval only and not town planning approval.
And we will touch on the building approval in upcoming segments, but let's say we've got a design there that, has to say, doesn't conform to town planning. Now, before we get into development approval, we must talk about your role in the building industry, because viewers at home probably know what an architect is from last week's episode with Julie, and they obviously know what a builder is, hopefully. Now, with yourself being a building certifier, it's only a new profession, especially in Queensland. Now, would you like to explain what you do and how you can assist renovators?
Yeah, for sure. Well, the certification or the issuance of building approvals used to be looked after primarily by the councils up until 1998. In 1998, that's when private certification, that process commenced here in Queensland. And the certifier, it's their responsibility to issue all the approval documentation in relation to building works. And yeah, a company such as ours, Brisbane Certification Group, we can issue the building approvals for both domestic new houses and renovations, and also commercial building projects as well.
We must clarify for the audience at home that you're going to be talking about development approvals, which is not exactly your profession, but because you guys deal with it a lot when dealing with building approvals, I guess you have like a bit of authority to talk about it. But usually development approvals usually go through a town planner, and you guys can assist with that should like clients come to you with initial design. Is that correct? That's
right, yeah. When the plans are originally or created by the architect or the draftsman, they should have a fair idea of whether town planning approval is required or not. When people submit a quote request to us and we do prepare a quote for them, we'll advise them if we think that town planning approval is required. And the third option available is to consult with a town planner from the council, and they should be able to advise you whether town planning approval is required or not.
So can we just, so you've just briefly spoken about the steps to development approval. Would you like to take over there with how the development approval process works?
For sure. Well, with if it's decided or determined that the project does need town planning approval, then obviously a town planning application is lodged to the council. That application can be made by the owner or the draftsman or the builder or even the private town planner as well. So it can really be lodged by anybody. The application itself usually consists of the council fees, the application forms and a copy of the drawings that have been prepared. Once that application is submitted to council have got 20 business days to do the assessment and either issue a request for information, an extension of time for them to complete their assessment, or issue the actual approval itself to the applicant. The main concerns or the main issues that come about at that time is that information request from council. Depending on the quality of the documentation that's been provided, the scale and the scope of works that are going to be carried out, and also any other reports that may need to be obtained by the applicant. They're usually the items that can sort of hold up the town planning approval process. Once council are satisfied that they have all the information that they need, they'll issue the town planning approval, and within that 20 I think it's 20 business days of that town planning approval being issued, there's an opportunity for the applicant to appeal the town planner's decision.
Now I'm going to take you back. Like some people might not know what would trigger like a town planning issue, but the basic ones are like setbacks from boundaries and like the rear sides. That's the basic ones, isn't it? And also the height.
That's right. Yeah, the height over 8.5 is probably the most common one for renovations, which involve raising the dwelling. Other items usually are building in a flood area. Yep. And also on small lot, where given that it is a small lot, it's quite restrictive as to what you can and can't do, and most of the time people do want to have that extra length of the house or extra height, and that's usually the triggers for town planning. Okay.
Now, I'm not sure if you quite mentioned it, but I was reading through your notes. There's two types of accessible town planning. There's the impact accessible and code accessible. To the truth, I don't even know the difference myself. Can you please explain to me as well as the viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. The main differences between code accessible and impact accessible town planning is that with impact assessment town planning, the applicant or the landowner is required to advertise the proposed works that they're going to be carrying out. That's usually done by an advertising board outside the front of the property. And also an advert in the local newspaper. And that process just allows the council to receive any submissions from people, either neighbours or people who drive by, or people in the community who think that the proposed development isn't going to fit in with the area, or it's just going to have an adverse effect on, say, the stormwater running through the property. And that impact accessible process is probably the most time consuming and the more expensive of the two main levels of town planning, of that code assessment and the impact assessment. There is a third level, which is self-assessable town planning, and that's sort of what we talked about at the start, where if the works comply with the self-assessable requirements, then town planning is not required.
Okay, and just to remind the viewers, those signs that you see on the houses, they're generally bland black and white ones that they're just a development application. Yeah. If people, I commonly see them, but just for viewers at home, they're not pretty pink ones. They're just plain black and white signs. That's right. Yep. And they sit there for what, a couple of weeks on the?
Yeah, I think it's 3 or 4 weeks that they've got to sit there for, with anyone that lodges a submission to council with any concerns that they have, once the council have made their decision for the town planning approval, those people who lodge submissions can in fact lodge an appeal against the town planning approval that council made, and that appeal is heard through the Planning and Environment Court. And if the court rules in favour of the submitter, then that ruling has to be upheld by the council and the town planning approval amended to show those changes.
Well, I think it'd be time to take a break because some people might want a cup of coffee and just digest what you've just gone through there, Gareth. And what we'll do is take a quick break and we'll be right back.